The wagon wheel cracked against a stone on the outskirts of Shoshone, Idaho, and Olivia Thorne felt the jolt run through her spine like the final snap of everything she had left to lose. She pulled the reins tight, bringing the tired mare to a halt as dust settled around them in the September afternoon of 1876. Her fingers trembled as she climbed down, not from fear but from the bone-deep exhaustion that came from traveling 300 miles with nothing but determination. And the coins she had gotten from selling her wedding ring, the quilt her grandmother had stitched, and every last possession that might bring a penny. The wheel was not broken, but the iron rim had loosened, and Olivia knew enough about wagons to understand she could not make it much further without repairs. She stood there in the dirt road, her dark hair falling loose from its pins, her calico dress covered in the grime of travel, and felt the weight of widowhood press down on her shoulders. Thomas had been dead for 8 months now, taken by fever in their small Missouri farmhouse, and the bank had wasted no time claiming the land his father had worked for 30 years. At 24 years old, Olivia had found herself with nothing but the clothes on her back and a wagon that now seemed determined to fail her too. She looked toward the small town ahead, its wooden buildings rough and weathered against the Idaho landscape. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still holding snow even as autumn approached. This was supposed to be her fresh start, the place where she could find work, rebuild, maybe open the seamstress shop she had always dreamed about. But standing here with a failing wagon and exactly $7.32 to her name, that dream felt as distant as the stars. "That rim is going to fall clean off if you keep going," a voice said behind her, and Olivia spun around so fast her skirts kicked up dust. The man sat astride a buckskin horse, and the late afternoon sun created a halo effect around his wide-brimmed hat. He was tall even sitting down, broad-shouldered, with dust on his boots and the easy posture of someone who had spent more time in a saddle than anywhere else. As he tipped his hat back, she could see his face clearly, strong jawline shadowed with stubble, eyes the color of winter sky, and an expression that held neither judgment nor pity. "I can see that," Olivia said, lifting her chin despite the embarrassment flooding through her. She hated appearing helpless, hated that this stranger had found her at her lowest moment. He dismounted with fluid grace and walked toward the wagon, his spurs making soft music with each step. "Levi Tanner," he said, extending a hand. "I work at the Triple Creek Ranch about 5 miles north of town." Olivia hesitated, then took his hand. His grip was warm and calloused, the hand of a man who worked hard for his living. "Olivia Thorne, Mrs. Thorne." His eyes had already found her bare ring finger, and she saw the question form before he could stop it. "Widow Thorne," she corrected, the words still tasting bitter in her mouth. "My husband passed 8 months ago." Levi nodded, removing his hat entirely now. His hair was dark brown, slightly too long, curling at his collar. "I am sorry for your loss, madam. That is a hard burden to carry alone." He crouched beside the wheel, examining it with careful attention. "This needs proper work. The blacksmith in town can fix it, but it will take a day, maybe 2. Olivia felt her stomach drop. A day or 2 meant paying for a room at a boarding house, meant spending money she did not have for food, for the repairs themselves. She had calculated everything so carefully, planned for arriving in Shoshone with just enough to rent a small room while she found work. This delay could ruin everything. "How much will it cost?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Levi stood, studying her with those sharp blue eyes. She had the uncomfortable feeling he could see right through her brave face to the desperation underneath. "Probably $3 for the work, maybe 4. More than half of what she had left." Olivia turned away, pressing her hand to her mouth as she calculated rapidly. She could skip meals, could sleep in the wagon instead of paying for a room, could make it work somehow. She had to make it work. "I can take you into town," Levi said quietly. "Help you get the wagon to the blacksmith. He is a fair man, won't overcharge you." "I cannot pay you for your trouble," Olivia said quickly, facing him again. Pride was a luxury she could not afford, but she would not take charity either. "I appreciate the offer, but I will manage." Something shifted in Levi's expression, a softening around his eyes. "Did not ask for payment, Mrs. Thorne, just offering help to someone who looks like she could use it." He paused, then added carefully, "No offense intended." Olivia studied him, searching for any sign of ulterior motives. She had learned in the past 8 months that kindness often came with strings attached, that men saw a young widow as either prey or charity case. But Levi Tanner's face showed only honest concern, the same kind of neighborly care her father used to show to travelers passing through their old farm. "Why?" she asked simply. Levi put his hat back on, tilting it to shade his eyes from the sun. "Because everyone needs help sometimes. Because this is hard country, and it is harder if you try to face it alone. Because my mother raised me to be useful when I can be." He smiled then, a quick flash that transformed his serious face. "Take your pick of reasons, Mrs. Thorne. The offer stands either way." Something in Olivia's chest loosened slightly. "Just to the blacksmith," she said, "and I insist on thanking you properly even if I cannot pay. Deal." Levi moved to the mare's harness. "What is her name?" "Patience," Olivia said, and Levi laughed, a warm sound that seemed to roll across the open landscape. "Well, Patience, let us get you and your mistress into town before this wheel decides to give up entirely." He tied his own horse to the back of the wagon, then climbed up onto the seat beside Olivia. She felt acutely aware of his presence, the way he took up space without crowding her, the quiet competence in how he handled the reins. They moved slowly, carefully, and Levi kept up a steady stream of conversation that required nothing from her but the occasional response. He told her about Shoshone, how it had grown in the past few years with the mining operations in the nearby mountains, how the railroad was supposed to come through eventually, though folks had been saying that for a while now. He pointed out landmarks as they approached town: the general store run by a Swedish couple, the saloon that actually kept decent order thanks to a bartender who had once been a boxing champion, the church that held services every Sunday and Wednesday. "The boarding house is run by Mrs. Chen," Levi said as they rolled onto the main street. "She is fair with her prices and keeps a good table. If you need a place to stay, she would treat you right." Olivia filed that information away, though she still planned to sleep in the wagon if possible. The town was bigger than she had expected, with perhaps 24 buildings lining the wide dirt street. People moved about their business, and she caught curious glances directed at the wagon, at her, at the handsome cowboy beside her. The blacksmith shop stood at the far end of town, marked by the ring of hammer on anvil and the glow of the forge visible even in daylight. Levi pulled the wagon to a stop in front and jumped down, tying Patience to the hitching post before coming around to help Olivia descend. His hand circled her waist as he lifted her down, and for a moment they stood very close, close enough that she could see the darker ring around his blue irises, could smell the scent of leather and sage that clung to him. Then he stepped back quickly, professionally, and turned toward the shop. "Marcus," he called out, "got a wagon here that needs your expertise." The blacksmith emerged from the shadows, a massive man with arms like tree trunks and a surprisingly gentle face. He was perhaps 40, with graying hair and kind brown eyes that crinkled when he smiled. "Levi Tanner, "What trouble are you bringing me today?" "No trouble, just a lady who needs help." Levi gestured to Olivia. "This is Mrs. Thorne. She is new to Shoshone and her wagon wheel needs attention." Marcus wiped his hands on his leather apron and nodded respectfully to Olivia. "Let me take a look, madam." As Marcus examined the wheel, Olivia stood back with Levi. "You did not have to do that," she said quietly. "Vouch for me to your friend." "Marcus is not my friend, he is everyone's friend," Levi replied. "But he does good work and he will be fair with you." "That is worth vouching for." Marcus straightened up, his expression thoughtful. "I can fix this, but I will need to remove the wheel, heat and reshape the rim, then refit it. It is a day's work, maybe into tomorrow morning. I can have it ready by noon tomorrow if I start early." "How much?" Olivia asked, bracing herself. $3.50, Marcus said. "That includes the materials and labor." Olivia did the math quickly. It would leave her with less than $4. Enough for maybe 3 nights at the boarding house if she ate sparingly, or a week if she slept in the wagon. She would need to find work immediately, but she had expected that anyway. "Can you do half now and half when you collect?" Marcus asked, as if sensing her hesitation. The kindness in his offer made Olivia's throat tight. "I can pay it all now," she said, reaching for the small purse she kept hidden in her dress pocket. She counted out $3.50 in coins, watching her safety net shrink with each piece of silver. Marcus took the money with a nod. "I will take good care of it, madam. Your wagon will be sound for many more miles when I am finished." "Thank you," Olivia said, meaning it deeply. As they walked away from the blacksmith shop, Levi glanced at her. "You have a place to stay tonight." "I will be fine," Olivia said, which was not an answer and they both knew it. "Mrs. Thorne," Levi said, stopping in the middle of the street. "I do not mean to overstep, but I saw how much money you just handed Marcus. You are running on fumes, are not you?" Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks. "My finances are my own concern, Mr. Tanner." "They are," he agreed. "But if you are planning to sleep in your wagon, you should know that Sheriff Coleman runs a tight town, but there have been some drifters lately. It is not safe for a woman alone." He held up his hand before she could protest. "Before you tell me again that you will be fine, just hear me out. Mrs. Chen at the boarding house is always looking for help. She has got a bad hip and has trouble with the heavy work. If you talk to her, she might give you room and board in exchange for some labor. It would get you through until you find other work." It was a good idea, a practical solution that would not cost Olivia anything but sweat and effort, both of which she had in abundance. But accepting help still felt like admitting defeat, like confirming that she could not make it on her own. "I am a seamstress," Olivia said instead. "I was planning to offer my services, take in mending and alterations." "That is good work," Levi said. "Shoshone could use a good seamstress, but it might take time to build up clientele, and in the meantime you need to eat and sleep somewhere safe." His voice gentled. "There is no shame in accepting help, Mrs. Thorne. We all need it sometimes." Olivia looked at him, really looked at him. Levi Tanner could not have been more than 28 or 29, but there was a steadiness to him that spoke of hard-won wisdom. He was not offering help out of pity or because he saw her as weak. He was offering because it was the right thing to do, the practical thing, and that made all the difference. "Where is this boarding house?" she asked finally. The smile that crossed Levi's face was warm enough to chase away some of the cold fear that had lived in Olivia's chest since Thomas died. "Come on, I will introduce you, Mrs." Chen's boarding house was a 2-story building painted white with green shutters, looking almost cheerful against the rough frontier town around it. The front porch was swept clean, and flower boxes held late summer blooms that added spots of color to the landscape. "Mrs." Chen herself answered the door. a small woman in her 60s with silver-streaked black hair pulled back in a neat bun. Her face was lined with age and weather, but her dark eyes were sharp and assessing as she looked from Levi to Olivia. "Levi Tanner," she said, her accent carrying the musical tones of her native Cantonese. "You are early for supper and you have brought company." "Good afternoon, Mrs. Chen," Levi said, removing his hat. "This is Mrs. Olivia Thorne. She just arrived in Shoshone and I thought you two should meet." Mrs. Chen's eyes traveled over Olivia, taking in the travel-stained dress, the worn boots, the proud set of her shoulders despite obvious exhaustion. "Come in," she said, stepping back. "Both of you, I just made tea." The interior of the boarding house was as tidy as the exterior, with simple but comfortable furniture, and the smell of cooking wafting from the back of the house. Mrs. Chen led them to a small parlor and gestured for them to sit while she poured tea from a painted pot into delicate cups. "Now," she said, settling into a chair with a barely concealed wince that spoke of the hip pain Levi had mentioned, "tell me why a cowboy brings a widow to my door." Olivia felt Levi glance at her, giving her the choice of how to answer. She sat up straighter, meeting Mrs. Chen's eyes directly. "I need work, madam. Mr. Tanner thought you might need help around the boarding house. I am willing to work hard in exchange for room and board while I establish my seamstress business." "Seamstress?" Mrs. Chen's eyebrows rose. "You have experience?" "Yes, madam. I have been sewing since I was 6 years old. I can do everything from simple mending to complex alterations and dressmaking. I brought my sewing kit with me." It was one of the few possessions Olivia had refused to sell, even when she was desperate. Mrs. Chen nodded slowly. "I have 6 rooms for boarders. 4 are occupied currently. The work includes cooking, cleaning, laundry, and mending. It is hard work, especially laundry day. My hip makes it difficult." She paused, studying Olivia. "I can offer you a small room on the 2nd floor and 3 meals a day in exchange for 6 hours of work each day. The rest of your time is your own to build your business. Does that seem fair?" It seemed more than fair. It seemed like a miracle. Olivia felt something loosen in her chest, the tight knot of anxiety that had lived there for months. "Very fair, madam. Thank you. You can start tomorrow," Mrs. Chen said. "Tonight you will have supper with the other boarders and get settled in. Your room is ready. It is small but clean." "I have some things in my wagon," Olivia said, "but it is at the blacksmith shop for repairs." "Levi can help you fetch them," Mrs. Chen said, with a knowing look at the cowboy that made him shift slightly in his seat. "Happy to help," Levi said. An hour later, Olivia stood in her new room with her traveling bags at her feet and Levi Tanner filling the doorway. It was small, as Mrs. Chen had said, but it had a real bed with clean sheets, a washstand with a mirror, a small wardrobe, and a window that looked out over the street. To Olivia, who had been sleeping in a wagon for weeks, it looked like paradise. "This is good of her," Olivia said, running her hand over the patchwork quilt on the bed. "Good of you, too. I do not know how to thank you properly, Mr. Tanner." "You could start by calling me Levi," he said, leaning against the door frame. "And you do not need to thank me. I just made an introduction. You did more than that, and we both know it." Olivia turned to face him, surprised to find herself relaxed in his presence. There was something about Levi that put her at ease, made her feel less alone. "You could have ridden past my wagon. You could have pointed me toward town and left me to figure out the rest myself. Instead, you took time from your day to help a stranger." Levi shrugged, but she could see the faint color rising in his cheeks. "Like I said, my mother raised me right." "Is she here in Shoshone?" Olivia asked. Something shifted in Levi's expression, a shadow passing over his features. "She passed 5 years ago. My father went a year later." It was just me and my sister after that, but Rachel married a rancher down in Wyoming. I stayed on at the Triple Creek, working for Mr. and Mrs. Patterson. I am sorry about your parents, Olivia said softly. Thank you. It is part of life out here, I suppose. People come and go. He straightened up, putting his hat back on. I should let you rest. Supper is at 6. Mrs. Chen keeps a punctual table. Levi, Olivia said, and he paused. Will you be at supper? Not tonight. I need to get back to the ranch before full dark. He smiled. But I come into town most Saturday nights. There is a dance at the church social hall once a month, and the saloon has music on weekends. Maybe I will see you around. Maybe, Olivia agreed, feeling something flutter in her chest that was not quite hope but close to it. After Levi left, Olivia unpacked her bag slowly, hanging her 2 spare dresses in the wardrobe, setting her sewing kit on the small table by the window. The box felt light in her hands, a reminder of what she had sold. The quilt had been inside, the beautiful wedding ring pattern her grandmother had stitched with tiny, perfect stitches. Olivia had cried when she sold it to a merchant in the last town, but she had needed the money for food, for feed for patients. Now she had a chance to start over. Levi's words from earlier came back to her. Start over here. He had not said those exact words, but the sentiment was the same. Shoshone could be her fresh start, the place where she rebuilt her life from the ashes of everything she had lost. That night at supper, Olivia met the other boarders. A young schoolteacher named Miss Sarah Whitmore, 2 miners named Jack and Peter who were brothers from Cornwall, and an elderly gentleman named Mr. Abernathy who worked as a clerk at the general store. They were kind to her, welcoming, asking polite questions about where she had come from without prying into painful details. Mrs. Chen served a meal of roasted chicken, potatoes, and vegetables that tasted like heaven after weeks of hardtack and jerky. Olivia ate slowly, savoring every bite, and felt some of the hollowness inside her begin to fill. As she lay in bed that night, clean and fed and safe for the first time in months, Olivia allowed herself to think about Levi Tanner. His easy smile, his quiet competence, the way he had helped without making her feel lesser for needing it. She was not looking for romance. After Thomas, the idea of loving someone again felt impossible, a risk she could not afford to take. But friendship, kindness, human connection. Those things she needed desperately. Tomorrow she would start work for Mrs. Chen, and in her free hours, she would begin to build her seamstress business. She would put up notices at the general store, maybe speak to the ladies at church on Sunday. She would make a life here in Shoshone, Idaho, and she would do it on her own terms. But as she drifted off to sleep, it was Levi's blue eyes she saw in her mind, and his voice saying, "Everyone needs help sometimes." The next week passed in a blur of work and determination. Olivia threw herself into her duties at the boarding house, rising early to help Mrs. Chen prepare breakfast, spending the morning cleaning rooms and doing laundry. The work was hard, especially hauling water for the wash, but Olivia had never been afraid of hard work. Mrs. Chen proved to be a fair but exacting employer, showing Olivia exactly how she liked things done and praising her when she did them well. In the afternoons, Olivia devoted herself to establishing her seamstress business. She put up notices at the general store and the church, offering her services for mending, alterations, and custom sewing. The response was slow at first, just a few items of mending from Miss Whitmore and one of the miners' wives, but Olivia poured her skill into every stitch, determined to build a reputation for quality work. She did not see Levi during that first week, though she found herself thinking about him more often than she wanted to admit. Every time a horse rode past the boarding house, she looked up, hoping to see his buckskin mount. Every time the door opened, She half expected his tall frame to fill the doorway. It was foolish, she told herself. He had helped her as any decent person would, and now he was back to his own life at the Triple Creek Ranch. There was no reason for him to seek her out, no reason to expect anything more from him. Still, when Saturday evening came and Mrs. Chen mentioned that many of the townsfolk gathered at the saloon for music and dancing, Olivia found herself wondering if Levi would be there. "You should go," Miss Whitmore said as they cleared the supper dishes together. The schoolteacher was perhaps 21, with warm brown hair and an infectious laugh. "It is good fun, very respectable. The saloon owner does not allow drunkenness or fighting on Saturday nights. It is more like a community dance." "I am not sure I am ready for socializing," Olivia said, though part of her was curious. "Nonsense," Mrs. Chen said, coming into the kitchen with her limping gait. "You have worked hard all week. You deserve some enjoyment. Besides, it is good for business. People will see you, talk to you, remember you when they need sewing done." It was practical advice, the kind Olivia could not argue with. An hour later, she found herself walking down the main street with Miss Whitmore, both of them wearing their best dresses. Olivia's was a deep green calico that she had altered to fit her better, with careful tucks that showed off her small waist. It was not fancy, but it was clean and neat, and it made her feel almost pretty for the first time in months. The saloon was bright with lamplight, and music spilled out into the evening air. Inside, someone was playing a fiddle while another kept rhythm on a guitar. The space had been cleared for dancing, and several couples were already moving through the steps of a reel. Olivia stood near the doorway, feeling suddenly out of place. She had not danced since before Thomas got sick, had not been in a crowd like this since she left Missouri. The noise and laughter felt overwhelming after the quiet solitude of the past months. Mrs. Thorne. She turned to see Levi Tanner making his way through the crowd, and her heart did an unexpected skip in her chest. He had cleaned up from his working clothes, wearing dark trousers and a white shirt with a string tie, his hair still damp from washing. He looked different without the layer of trail dust, younger and somehow more approachable. "Levi," she said, pleased that her voice came out steady. "I did not know if you would be here." "I said I came to town on Saturday nights," he reminded her, smiling. "How was your first week with Mrs. Chen?" "Good, hard work, but good." Olivia found herself smiling back. "I have started to get some sewing commissions too, nothing major yet, but it is a start." "That is wonderful." Levi glanced toward the dance floor, then back at her. "Would you care to dance, Mrs. Thorne, or is it too soon?" Olivia understood what he was asking. Was it too soon after her husband's death to dance, to enjoy herself, to live? The question had haunted her for months. Some part of her felt guilty for being alive when Thomas was dead, guilty for laughing or finding pleasure in anything. But standing here in this bright room with music playing and Levi Tanner looking at her with those patient blue eyes, Olivia realized that Thomas would not have wanted her to stop living. He had loved life, loved joy, and he would want her to find it again. "I would like that," she said. Levi's smile widened and he offered his arm. As they joined the other dancers, Olivia felt his hand settle at her waist, his other hand taking hers. The fiddle struck up a new tune, something quick and lively, and they fell into the rhythm of the dance. Olivia had forgotten how good it felt to move like this, to let the music carry her, to feel the simple pleasure of physical exertion that was not work. Levi was a good dancer, sure-footed and confident, guiding her through the turns without making her feel clumsy. They did not talk much, just moved together through the patterns of the dance, but Olivia found herself laughing when he spun her a bit too enthusiastically, and she nearly crashed into another couple. "Sorry," Levi said, steadying her with easy strength. "Got carried away." "It is fine," Olivia said, breathless and grinning. I had forgotten how fun this could be. They danced 2 more dances, and then Levi guided her to the side where a table held glasses of cool cider. As they stood together, sipping their drinks and watching the other dancers, Olivia felt more content than she had in months. This was what she needed, she realized. Not just work and survival, but moments of simple human connection, of joy. Tell me about the ranch, she said to Levi. What is it like working at the Triple Creek? Levi leaned against the wall, his shoulder almost touching hers. It is good work. The Pattersons are fair employers, treat their hands right. We run about 500 head of cattle plus horses. I am the head wrangler, so I work mostly with the horses, breaking and training them. It keeps me busy. Do you like it? I do, Levi said thoughtfully. Horses make more sense to me than most people. They are honest, you know. They do not pretend to be something they are not. He glanced at her. What about you? Did you always want to be a seamstress? Olivia considered the question. I always loved sewing, the way you can take fabric and thread and create something beautiful and useful. My grandmother taught me, and she was a true artist with a needle. I dreamed of having my own shop someday, a place where ladies could come for custom dresses and fine work. She looked down at her cider. Thomas and I were going to save up for it, but then he got sick, and after that, there was no money left for dreams. There can be again, Levi said gently. Dreams do not die just because they are delayed. Olivia met his eyes, seeing the sincerity there. You really believe that? I have to, Levi said. Otherwise, what is the point of any of it? Before Olivia could respond, a commotion near the door drew their attention. A group of men had entered, trail dusty and loud, clearly having already done some drinking before arriving. The bartender, a massive man with a scarred face, moved to intercept them. Rules are the same as always, boys, he said in a voice that carried across the room. No fighting, no drunkenness, and you treat the ladies with respect or you are out. We clear, the leader of the group, a rangy man with a cruel mouth, waved a dismissive hand. We are clear, Hank, just want to have a little fun. But as the group dispersed into the room, Olivia saw the way their eyes raked over the women present, lingering in a way that made her skin crawl. One of them, a younger man with a patchy beard, stumbled near where she and Levi stood. Well now, he said, looking Olivia up and down. Who is this pretty thing? Levi straightened immediately, stepping slightly in front of Olivia. The lady is with me, he said, his voice carrying a warning edge she had not heard before. The drunk man laughed. Sharing is caring, friend. How about a dance, sweetheart? The lady said no, Levi said, and now there was steel in his voice. Olivia put her hand on Levi's arm, feeling the tension coiled in his muscles. It is fine, she said quietly. Let us just go. But the drunk had taken offense now, puffing up like a rooster. You saying I am not good enough to dance with her. You think you are better than me, cowboy. I think you are drunk and looking for trouble, Levi said evenly. And I am suggesting you find somewhere else to look. For a moment, the situation teetered on a knife's edge. Then the bartender appeared, his massive hand clamping down on the drunk's shoulder. Time for you to cool off outside, friend. You can come back when you are sober. The drunk sputtered protests, but allowed himself to be steered toward the door, his companions following with sheepish expressions. The music, which had faltered, started up again, and the festive atmosphere slowly returned. Levi turned to Olivia, his expression concerned. Are you all right? I am fine, she said, though her heart was racing. Thank you for stepping in. Always, Levi said simply, and the weight of that single word settled over Olivia like a warm blanket. They stayed another hour, dancing and talking, and when Levi finally walked her back to the boarding house, Olivia found herself reluctant for the evening to end. Thank you, she said as they stood on Mrs. Chen's front porch. For tonight, for last week, for everything. You keep thanking me, Levi said, smiling, but really I should be thanking you. For what? For giving me a reason to look forward to Saturday nights, he said. And before she could process that statement, he had tipped his hat and headed back down the street, disappearing into the darkness. Olivia stood on the porch for a long moment, her hand pressed to her chest where her heart beat too fast. She had told herself she was not looking for romance, that she was not ready to feel anything for anyone. But standing there in the cool night air, she could not deny the warmth spreading through her at Levi's words. It was too soon, she told herself. Too fast. She barely knew him, but another part of her, a part that had been dormant since Thomas died, whispered that maybe it was not too soon. Maybe it was exactly the right time. The weeks that followed fell into a comfortable rhythm. Olivia worked mornings and early afternoons for Mrs. Chen, building a warm friendship with the older woman who shared stories of her own journey from China to Idaho, of building a life in a strange land through determination and hard work. In the afternoons, Olivia sewed, and slowly, steadily, her client list grew. Mrs. Patterson from the Triple Creek Ranch came to town one day and sought out Olivia specifically, asking her to alter several dresses and create a new riding skirt. The work was well paid and beautifully executed, and Mrs. Patterson spread word among the other ranch wives in the area. Soon Olivia found herself with more work than she could handle alone, sewing late into the evenings by lamplight, her fingers flying over fabric with the skill her grandmother had taught her. And every Saturday, Levi came to town. Sometimes they danced at the saloon. Sometimes they simply walked the main street together, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about his childhood in Kansas, about learning to ride almost before he could walk, about the sister who wrote him letters from Wyoming filled with news of her growing family. She told him about Missouri, about Thomas and their quiet life together, about the pain of losing him and everything else in such quick succession. With Levi, Olivia found she could talk about Thomas without the crushing weight of grief. Levi never seemed jealous or uncomfortable when she mentioned her late husband. Instead, he listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed he understood how important those memories were to her. "He sounds like he was a good man," Levi said one Saturday evening in late October as they sat on a bench outside the general store, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "He was," Olivia agreed, "kind and gentle and devoted to his family. We had planned to have children, build a life together." She paused, then added quietly, "But I think I have spent so much time grieving what I lost that I forgot to live the life I still have." Levi looked at her, his blue eyes serious. "And now I am trying to find balance," Olivia said. "To honor Thomas's memory without being trapped by it, to build something new without forgetting what came before." "That seems like wisdom to me," Levi said softly. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, and then Levi reached over and took her hand. It was the first time he had touched her outside of dancing, and Olivia felt the contact like electricity running up her arm. His hand was warm and calloused, strong and careful at the same time. "Olivia," he said, using her first name for the first time. "I know this might be too soon, and you can tell me if it is. But I need you to know that these Saturdays have become the best part of my week. Seeing you, talking to you, getting to know you. It is more than just friendship for me, and I think you should know that." Olivia's heart pounded in her chest. She looked at their joined hands, at Levi's face with its earnest expression, and felt something crack open inside her. She was not ready, she told herself. It was too soon after Thomas, too fast, too risky. But her heart, that treacherous organ, had other ideas. "It is more than friendship for me too," she admitted, the words barely above a whisper. And that terrifies me, Levi. I lost Thomas and it nearly destroyed me. I do not know if I can risk that kind of pain again. Levi squeezed her hand gently. I cannot promise you that you will never hurt again. Life does not work that way. But I can promise you that I will do everything in my power to be worthy of your trust, to be careful with your heart, because I know how precious it is. Olivia looked up at him, seeing the truth in his eyes, and felt her carefully constructed walls begin to crumble. I am scared, she confessed. Me too, Levi said with a small smile. Falling for someone is always scary, but maybe it is worth being scared for. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, Levi leaned closer. Olivia's breath caught as she realized what was happening, as she made the conscious choice not to retreat. When his lips touched hers, soft and questioning, she felt something long dormant spark to life inside her. The kiss was gentle, reverent, nothing like the passionate embraces she had shared with Thomas in the privacy of their marriage. This was something different, a new beginning, and when Levi pulled back, Olivia found herself leaning toward him, wanting more. Was that all right? Levi asked, his voice rough. Yes, Olivia breathed. Yes, it was all right. They sat there as the sun finished setting, hands clasped and shoulders touching, and Olivia felt the last of her resistance crumble. She was falling for Levi Tanner, and the realization was both terrifying and exhilarating. As autumn deepened into winter, Olivia's relationship with Levi deepened as well. He came to town more frequently now, sometimes during the week, showing up at the boarding house with fresh game he had hunted or supplies he claimed Mrs. Chen needed. Everyone could see what was developing between them, and the townsfolk of Shoshone watched with approval. He is a good man, Mrs. Chen told Olivia one evening as they prepared supper together. Steady and true, you could do far worse. I am not looking to marry again, Olivia protested, though the words felt hollow even to her own ears. Mrs. Chen just smiled her knowing smile and said nothing more. In early November, Levi invited Olivia to visit the Triple Creek Ranch. He wanted her to see where he worked, to meet the Pattersons properly, to understand this part of his life. Olivia accepted, curious and nervous in equal measure. The ranch was beautiful, sprawling across a valley with mountains rising in the background. The main house was solid and well built, smoke rising from its chimneys into the crisp autumn air. Corrals held horses of every color, and in the distance, Olivia could see cattle grazing on the brown grass. Levi showed her around with obvious pride, introducing her to the other ranch hands, showing her the stables where he worked with the horses. Olivia watched him gentle a skittish mare with patience and skill, speaking to the animal in a low, soothing voice that made something warm unfurl in her chest. She was wild-caught, Levi explained, running his hand along the mare's neck. Scared of everything, but she is learning to trust. Olivia understood the metaphor, saw the parallel to her own journey. She too was learning to trust again, learning to let someone in despite her fear. Mrs. Patterson invited them to lunch, and Olivia found herself liking the ranch owner's wife immediately. She was a woman in her 50s with laugh lines around her eyes and capable hands that spoke of a lifetime of hard work. Levi has told us about you, Mrs. Patterson said as they sat around the kitchen table eating beef stew and fresh bread. He speaks very highly of your skill with a needle. Thank you for sending work my way, Olivia said. It has helped me establish my business more quickly than I could have hoped. Your work speaks for itself, Mrs. Patterson said warmly. That riding skirt you made me is the finest I have owned. I have been recommending you to everyone I know. After lunch, Levi saddled 2 horses and took Olivia riding across the ranch land. She was not an experienced rider, but the gentle mare Levi chose for her was patient with her inexperience. They rode to a high point that overlooked the entire valley, the wind cold on their faces but the view breathtaking. "This is beautiful," Olivia said, looking out at the vast landscape spread before them. "It is," Levi agreed, but when she glanced at him, he was looking at her, not the view. Heat rose to Olivia's cheeks. "You are staring." "Cannot help it," Levi said with a grin. "You are more interesting than scenery." "Flatterer," Olivia accused, but she was smiling. Levi dismounted and came to help her down, his hands circling her waist. But instead of setting her on the ground immediately, he held her there, their faces level, and kissed her with more passion than he had allowed himself before. Olivia wrapped her arms around his neck, kissing him back, feeling the cold wind and the warm sun and the solid strength of him all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Levi rested his forehead against hers. "I am falling in love with you, Olivia Thorne," he said. "Just thought you should know." Olivia's heart felt too big for her chest. She had known this was coming, had felt it building between them, but hearing the words still made her dizzy with emotion. "I am falling in love with you too," she confessed, "even though it terrifies me." "We will be terrified together," Levi said, and kissed her again. December brought the first serious snowfall, blanketing Shoshone in white and making travel difficult. Levi could not come to town as often, and Olivia found herself missing him with an intensity that surprised her. She threw herself into her work, taking on a commission to make Christmas dresses for several families, her fingers flying over fabric even as her mind wandered to a tall cowboy with blue eyes and a gentle smile. On Christmas Eve, when Olivia had resigned herself to not seeing Levi until the weather cleared, he appeared at the boarding house door covered in snow and grinning like a fool. "You rode through that storm?" Olivia demanded, torn between delight and exasperation. "Could not miss Christmas with you," Levi said, stomping snow off his boots. "Besides, I brought presents." The boarding house celebrated Christmas together, all the residents gathering in the parlor to exchange small gifts and sing carols. Levi had brought a ham from the ranch and a bottle of wine, and Mrs. Chen cooked a feast that made everyone groan with satisfaction. Later, when the others had retired to their rooms, Levi and Olivia sat by the fire in the parlor, the only light coming from the flames and the candles on the small Christmas tree Mrs. Chen had decorated. "I have something for you," Levi said, reaching into his coat pocket. He pulled out a small package wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. Olivia opened it carefully, and her breath caught. Inside was a thimble, but not just any thimble. It was silver, beautifully engraved with a pattern of roses and vines, the kind of fine work that spoke of skill and expense. "Levi," she breathed, "this is too much." "It is not enough," he said quietly. "But I saw it at the jeweler's in town, and I thought of you sewing by lamplight, building your dream one stitch at a time. I wanted you to have something beautiful to work with." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. No one had given her something so thoughtful, so perfectly suited to who she was in longer than she could remember. "Thank you," she whispered. "I love it." She had something for him too, a shirt she had sewn in secret, made from soft blue fabric that matched his eyes. She had embroidered his initials on the cuff in tiny, careful stitches. When he opened it, his expression softened into something that made Olivia's heart ache. "You made this?" "Every stitch," Olivia confirmed. "I wanted you to have something from me, something I made with my own hands." Levi stood, setting the shirt aside carefully, and pulled Olivia to her feet. He kissed her there by the firelight, and this time there was no hesitation, no holding back. Olivia melted into him, feeling the solid warmth of his body against hers, the way his hands cradled her face like something precious. When they finally broke apart, Levi's voice was rough with emotion. "Marry me, Olivia." Olivia's heart stopped. What? Marry me, Levi repeated, his blue eyes intense in the firelight. I know it is fast. I know you might need more time, but I love you. I want to build a life with you, want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to help you build your seamstress shop and grow old with you and fill a house with children if you want them. Marry me, Olivia. Start over here with me, not just in Shoshone, but in a life we build together. Olivia felt tears spill down her cheeks. Part of her wanted to say it was too soon, that she needed more time, that she was not ready. But standing there in Levi's arms, she realized that she was ready. She had spent months learning to live again, learning to trust again, and this man had been beside her every step of the way. He had helped her when she had nothing, had seen her at her lowest and never made her feel less than. He had been patient and kind and steady, and somewhere along the way she had not just fallen in love with him. She had learned to trust in love again. Yes, she said, laughing through her tears. Yes, I will marry you. Levi's whoop of joy probably woke the entire boarding house, but Olivia did not care. He spun her around, both of them laughing, and then kissed her with a fervor that made her forget the cold winter outside, forget everything except the warmth of his love. They were married in late January of 1877, in the small church in Shoshone with the whole town in attendance. Olivia wore a dress she had sewn herself, cream-colored wool with delicate embroidery at the collar and cuffs. Levi wore the blue shirt she had made him, looking handsome and nervous as he waited for her at the altar. Mrs. Chen cried during the ceremony. Miss Whitmore served as Olivia's attendant, and one of the ranch hands from Triple Creek stood up with Levi. The preacher spoke about love and commitment and building a life together, and when Levi slipped a simple gold band on Olivia's finger, she felt a sense of rightness settle over her. This was different from her marriage to Thomas. That had been young love, sweet and uncomplicated. This was deeper, forged in loss and survival and the conscious choice to trust again. Olivia loved Levi with eyes wide open, knowing that life could be cruel and uncertain, but choosing to build a future with him anyway. The reception was held at the boarding house, with Mrs. Chen outdoing herself with food, and the townsfolk bringing contributions of cake and pie and bottles of wine. There was music and dancing, and Olivia found herself passed from partner to partner as the men of Shoshone claimed their dance with the bride. But it was dancing with Levi that made her heart sing, moving together in perfect rhythm just as they had that first Saturday night all those months ago. When he pulled her close, his lips by her ear, and whispered, "Ready to go home, Mrs. Tanner," Olivia felt a thrill run through her. Home was a small house on the Triple Creek Ranch that Mr. Patterson had offered to Levi as a wedding gift, along with a raise in pay that would help them build their future. It was just 3 rooms, but it was theirs, and Olivia had spent the past weeks making it comfortable, sewing curtains and quilts, creating a space that felt like home. That night, as Levi carried her over the threshold and into their new life together, Olivia felt the last shadow of grief lift from her heart. She would always remember Thomas, always hold those years as precious, but she was no longer defined by loss. She was Olivia Tanner now, wife to a good man, building a new life with love and hope and determination. The winter passed in a blur of happiness. Olivia continued her sewing business, converting one of the rooms in their small house into a proper workroom. Word of her skills spread beyond Shoshone, and she found herself taking commissions from women in neighboring towns, her reputation growing steadily. Levi worked long days at the ranch, but he always came home to her, and those evenings together were precious. They cooked meals side by side, sat by the fire talking about their days, made love with a passion that deepened as they learned each other's bodies and hearts. In early spring, Olivia realized she was pregnant. The discovery filled her with equal parts joy and terror. She had wanted children with Thomas, had grieved when his death stole that future from her. Now, carrying Levi's child, she felt as if life had given her a second chance at that dream. When she told Levi, he picked her up and spun her around, whooping with joy just as he had when she agreed to marry him. Then he set her down carefully, his hands gentle on her still flat stomach, his eyes full of wonder. "A baby," he breathed. "Our baby. Are you happy?" Olivia asked, though his expression made the answer obvious. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," Levi said, pulling her into his arms. "You have given me everything, Olivia. A home, a family, a reason to wake up grateful every single day." The pregnancy was not easy. Olivia suffered from morning sickness that lasted well into the afternoon, and as summer approached, the heat made her uncomfortable and swollen. But Levi was endlessly patient, bringing her cool water, rubbing her aching feet, sitting with her on the porch in the evenings when the house was too hot to bear. Mrs. Chen visited regularly, bringing herbal teas and remedies from her homeland that eased some of Olivia's discomfort. The older woman had become like a mother to Olivia, filling the void left by her own mother's death years before. "You are strong," Mrs. Chen told her during one particularly difficult day when Olivia felt overwhelmed by physical discomfort and emotional upheaval. "You survived losing everything and built a new life from nothing. You can survive this too." In late October, as the leaves turned gold and the air grew crisp, Olivia went into labor. It was long and difficult, and there were moments when she was certain she would not survive it. But Levi was there, holding her hand, whispering encouragement, refusing to leave even when the midwife suggested he might be more comfortable waiting outside. When their son was born, red-faced and squalling, Olivia felt a love so fierce it took her breath away. Levi cut the cord with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face as he looked at his child for the first time. "He is perfect," Levi said, his voice choked with emotion. "Olivia, he is perfect." They named him Lucas Thomas Tanner, honoring both his father and the man who had come before. Lucas had Levi's blue eyes and Olivia's dark hair, and from the beginning, he had a strong will that reminded Olivia of herself. Being a mother was harder than Olivia had imagined, filled with sleepless nights and constant worry. But it was also more rewarding than she could have dreamed. Watching Levi with their son, seeing the gentle way he held the baby, the wonder in his eyes every time Lucas smiled or made a new sound, Olivia fell even more deeply in love with her husband. As Lucas grew, Olivia found ways to balance motherhood with her sewing business. She took on fewer commissions but charged more for her work, focusing on quality over quantity. Women came from as far as boys to have Olivia create their special occasion dresses, her reputation for fine work spreading throughout Idaho. Levi had been promoted to ranch foreman, a position that came with more responsibility and better pay. They were able to save money, building toward the dream of Olivia's own shop in town, a proper establishment where she could work and sell her creations. Life was good, better than Olivia had ever imagined it could be after those dark days following Thomas's death. She had learned that grief and joy could coexist, that you could honor the past while building the future, that love was not a finite resource but something that grew and deepened with time. On a warm evening in May of 1879, Olivia stood on the porch of their home, watching Levi play with 2-year-old Lucas in the yard. Their son shrieked with laughter as Levi chased him, and the sound filled Olivia's heart to overflowing. She thought back to that day almost 3 years ago when her wagon wheel had cracked on the road to Shoshone, when she had been at the absolute end of her resources, selling everything she owned just to survive. She thought about the cowboy who had stopped to help, who had looked at her with kind eyes and offered assistance without judgment. "Start over here," Levi had said, though not in those exact words, but the sentiment had been clear from that first moment. "Here in Shoshone, here with me, you can start again." And she had. She had started over, built a new life from the ashes of the old, found love when she thought her heart was too broken to risk it again. Levi looked up and caught her watching, and the smile he gave her was full of such love that Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. He jogged over, Lucas bouncing on his hip, and dropped a kiss on her forehead. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Just how grateful I am," Olivia said, reaching up to touch his face. "For you, for Lucas, for this life we have built together. For the day my wagon wheel broke on the road to town." Levi laughed, understanding the irony. Funny how the worst moments can lead to the best things. "It is," Olivia agreed. She took Lucas from his arms, settling their son on her hip. "I have something to tell you." Levi's eyebrows rose. "Oh, I am pregnant again," Olivia said, watching delight spread across his face. "The baby should come in December." Levi's whoop scared the chickens in their coop, but Olivia just laughed as he pulled her and Lucas into a careful embrace, mindful of the new life growing inside her. "You keep making me the happiest man alive," Levi said against her hair. "Good," Olivia replied. "Because you make me the happiest woman." The second pregnancy was easier than the first, perhaps because Olivia knew what to expect, perhaps because she was simply stronger now. In late December, on a snowy evening just days before Christmas, she gave birth to a daughter. Sarah Marie Tanner was small and perfect, with her father's eyes and her mother's determined chin. Lucas was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to touch her constantly, to be involved in every aspect of her care. As Olivia sat in their rocking chair nursing Sarah while Levi read to Lucas by the fire, she felt a contentment so deep, it seemed to fill every corner of her being. This was what she had been seeking without knowing it, this sense of home and family and belonging. The years continued to pass, bringing challenges and joys in equal measure. Olivia finally opened her dress shop in town in 1881, a beautiful little storefront on Main Street with a sign that read, "Olivia's Fine Sewing" in elegant script. Business boomed, and she hired Miss Whitmore, who had given up teaching for marriage and then widowhood herself, to help manage the shop. Levi became a partner in the Triple Creek Ranch when Mr. Patterson decided to semi-retire, giving the younger man a stake in the operation he had helped build. The additional income allowed them to expand their small house, adding bedrooms for their growing family, because the family did continue to grow. After Sarah came Benjamin in 1883, then the twins, Alina and Emma, in 1886. Their home was chaotic and loud and filled with love, exactly what both Levi and Olivia had dreamed of. There were hard times too. A drought in 1885 nearly ruined the ranch, and only careful management and hard work saved it. Lucas broke his arm falling from a horse when he was 7, and Olivia spent a terrifying night certain they would lose him to infection before the doctor arrived. Sarah struggled with a lung ailment one winter that had them all praying for her recovery. But they weathered each storm together, Levi and Olivia's love deepening with every challenge they faced. They had built something strong, a partnership based on mutual respect and genuine affection, and it served as the foundation for everything else in their lives. On their 10th wedding anniversary in January of 1887, Levi took Olivia back to the spot where he had first proposed, that high point overlooking the Triple Creek Valley. The children stayed with Mrs. Chen, who despite her advancing age still doted on the Tanner children. They stood together in the cold winter air, wrapped in warm coats, looking out at the snow-covered landscape that had become their home. "Do you ever regret it?" Levi asked, his arm around her waist. "Staying here, building this life?" Olivia looked up at him in surprise. "Never. Not for a single moment. This is exactly where I am supposed to be. Even when Lucas tracked mud through your shop that time, or when the twins decided to give themselves haircuts the day before we were supposed to have our photograph taken." Olivia laughed, remembering both incidents vividly. "Even then. Especially then, actually. Those are the moments that make life rich, that make it real." Levi pulled her closer, and they stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then he said, "I have been thinking about that day I found you on the road, wagon wheel about to fail, clearly at the end of your rope. You were so proud, so determined not to accept help. I almost rode on by, thought you might take my head off if I offered." "Why did not you?" Olivia asked. She had never heard this part of the story before. "Because I looked in your eyes and saw something that called to me," Levi said simply. "Courage and strength and a will to survive that matched anything I had ever seen. And I thought, if she can keep going despite everything, the least I can do is offer a hand." "Best decision you ever made," Olivia teased. "Second best," Levi corrected. "The best was asking you to marry me, but offering to help you that day is a close second." Olivia reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small package. "I have something for you." Levi opened it to find a new thimble, this one gold and engraved with their initials intertwined. "I do not so," he said, confused. "It is symbolic," Olivia explained. "You gave me a silver thimble when we were courting, and it became my most treasured possession. I use it every day in my shop, and every time I do, I think of you. I wanted to give you something similar, something you could keep and think of me." Levi's eyes were suspiciously bright as he tucked the thimble carefully into his pocket. "I will carry it always," he promised. Then he pulled a small box from his own coat. "For you." Inside was a ring, beautifully crafted gold set with a small diamond. "I know you sold your wedding ring from Thomas when you were desperate," Levi said quietly. "And I know that hurt, giving up something that meant so much to you. This cannot replace that ring, and I am not trying to. But I wanted you to have something beautiful again, something that represents our life together." Olivia slipped the ring on her finger, tears streaming down her face. "It is perfect," she whispered. "You are perfect." "Far from it," Levi said with a laugh. "But I try to be worthy of you." They kissed there on the hilltop. Two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built a life of love and purpose and joy. The wind was cold, but neither of them felt it, warmed by the heat of their connection. As they rode back down to the ranch, Olivia thought about the twisting path that had brought her here. If Thomas had not died, if the bank had not taken the farm, if her wagon wheel had not cracked at exactly that spot on the road, she would never have met Levi. She would never have had Lucas or Sarah or Benjamin or the twins. Her life would have been completely different. She could not regret the path she had walked, because it had led her here, to this man, to this family, to this life. The pain of the past had shaped her, strengthened her, prepared her for the happiness she now knew. The children grew, each developing their own personalities and dreams. Lucas had his father's love of horses and became an accomplished rider, helping with the ranch operations even as a boy. Sarah showed an early talent for sewing, learning at her mother's knee just as Olivia had learned from her grandmother. Benjamin was quieter, bookish, dreaming of becoming a teacher. The twins were inseparable and mischievous, keeping everyone on their toes. In 1890, when Olivia was 38 years old, she found herself unexpectedly pregnant again. The pregnancy was difficult, her body older and less resilient than it had been with the others. Levi worried constantly, hovering over her in a way that was equal parts endearing and frustrating. "I am not made of glass," Olivia told him one evening when he insisted she sit down instead of helping with supper. "I know," Levi said, but his eyes were troubled. "I just cannot bear the thought of anything happening to you." Olivia understood his fear. They had built so much together, created this beautiful life, and the thought of it being torn apart was terrifying. But she also had faith, both in God and in her own strength. "Nothing is going to happen to me," she said firmly. "I have survived too much to be taken down by childbirth." In August of 1891, Olivia gave birth to their youngest child, another son they named Daniel. The labor was long and exhausting, but both mother and baby came through it healthy and strong. Daniel was their last child, the completion of their family, and Olivia felt a sense of rightness as she held him for the first time. The 1890s brought prosperity to the Tanner family. The ranch thrived under Levi's management, and Olivia's dress shop became the premier establishment in the region for fine sewing. They expanded their house again, adding a proper parlor and a larger kitchen, creating a home that could accommodate their large family and frequent guests. Mrs. Chen passed away peacefully in her sleep in 1894, and Olivia grieved deeply for the woman who had been such an important part of her fresh start in Shoshone. They buried her in the town cemetery, and Olivia made sure fresh flowers were placed on the grave every week, a small way to honor the kindness she had been shown. As the century turned, bringing with it the dawn of 1900, Olivia stood on the porch of their home watching the New Year's fireworks the town had organized. She was 48 years old now, her dark hair threaded with silver, her body bearing the marks of bearing 6 children. But she felt more beautiful than she ever had in her youth, more confident and sure of herself. Levi stood beside her, his own hair graying, lines etched around his eyes from years of squinting into the sun. He was still strong, still capable, still the steady presence he had always been. His hand found hers, their fingers intertwining automatically, a gesture so familiar it was like breathing. "New century," Levi said, watching the lights bloom across the sky. "New possibilities." "I am happy with the old possibilities," Olivia said, squeezing his hand. "The life we have built is more than I ever dreamed possible." Behind them, the house was full of noise and laughter. Lucas was there with his new wife, Mary, whom he had married the previous spring. Sarah and Benjamin had come from Boys, where they were attending school. The twins and Daniel still lived at home, filling the space with their energy and chaos. "We did all right, did we not?" Levi asked, and there was a note of wonder in his voice as if he still could not quite believe how blessed they were. "We did better than all right," Olivia said. "We built something extraordinary." As the fireworks continued, Olivia thought back to that desperate woman on the road to Shoshone, selling her ring and her quilt and feeling like she had sold her last hope along with them. She thought about the cowboy who had stopped to help, who had looked at her with kind eyes and offered her a chance to start over. She had started over, and in doing so, she had found not just survival but true, deep, abiding happiness. She had found love and family and purpose. She had found home. The years continued their steady march, bringing both joys and sorrows as all lives do. They celebrated weddings as each of their children found their own partners, creating new branches on the family tree. They welcomed grandchildren, and Olivia delighted in spoiling them just as Mrs. Chen had spoiled her own children. In 1910, as Olivia and Levi celebrated their 33rd wedding anniversary, they took stock of the life they had built. The ranch was still thriving, now being managed primarily by Lucas with Levi serving as an advisor. Olivia's dress shop had been passed to Sarah, who ran it with the same attention to quality and detail her mother had instilled. They had 14 grandchildren now, with more on the way. The family gathered every Sunday for dinner at the big house on Triple Creek, the noise and chaos and love filling every corner of the space. On a quiet evening in early summer, Olivia and Levi sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the Idaho sky in shades of gold and rose. They held hands, comfortable in the silence that came from decades of knowing each other completely. "You remember what you said to me that first day?" Olivia asked. "When you found me on the road?" Levi was quiet for a moment, thinking back 34 years to that September afternoon. "I said your wheel rim was going to fall off if you kept going," Olivia laughed. "After that, you offered to help me get to town, and when I asked why, you said everyone needs help sometimes, that this is hard country and it is harder if you try to face it alone." "I remember," Levi said softly. "You were right," Olivia said, "but you were also wrong. This country is not just hard, it is beautiful and full of possibility. And facing it alone would have been harder, but facing it with you made everything possible." Levi brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. "You made everything possible, Olivia. You took a chance on a dusty cowboy who stopped to help with a wagon wheel. You trusted me with your heart when you had every reason not to trust anyone. You built a life and a family and a legacy that will outlast both of us." "We built it together," Olivia corrected. "Every step of the way, we built it together." As the sun dipped below the horizon and the stars began to appear, Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had lost everything, Thomas and her home and her security. She had sold her ring and her quilt and felt like she was selling her last hope. But standing there on the road to Shoshone, desperate and alone, she had met a cowboy who offered her something more valuable than gold. He had offered her a chance to start over. Not by erasing the past or pretending it did not hurt, but by building something new alongside someone who understood that strength was not about never falling down. It was about getting back up, again and again, and having someone to help you when you needed it. Levi had been that someone for her, and she had been that someone for him. Together, they had created a life of purpose and love, had raised children who were making their own marks on the world, had built a legacy that would extend far beyond their own years. As they sat there in the gathering darkness, Olivia felt a profound sense of gratitude for every twist and turn that had led her to this moment. The pain had been real, the losses had been devastating, but they had also been the crucible that shaped her into the woman she was now. Strong and resilient and capable of deep, abiding love. "I love you," she said to Levi, the words as true now as they had been 33 years ago when she first spoke them. "I love you too," Levi replied, pulling her closer. "Today, tomorrow, and all the days after that." They sat together as the night deepened. Two people who had found each other against all odds, who had chosen each other every day since. The road that had brought Olivia to Shoshone had been hard and painful, but it had led her home. Home to this place, this man, this life they had built together from nothing but determination and hope and love. And as the stars wheeled overhead in their eternal dance, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that every hardship, every loss, every moment of despair had been worth it. Because they had brought her here to this perfect moment, this perfect life, this perfect love. The story of the widow who sold everything and the cowboy who helped her start over was not just their story anymore. It was the foundation of a family, a legacy, a love that would endure long after they were gone. And that, Olivia thought as Levi's steady heartbeat sounded beneath her ear, was the greatest gift of all. Years later, When Olivia and Levi were in their 70s and surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren, they would tell the story of how they met. The younger ones would listen with wide eyes as Grandma Olivia described being at the end of her rope, selling her precious possessions just to survive, and how Grandpa Levi had stopped to help her with a broken wagon wheel. What would have happened if Grandpa had not stopped? One of the great-grandchildren asked during a family gathering in 1920. Olivia, now 77 years old but still sharp-minded and engaged, considered the question seriously. "I do not know," she said honestly. "Perhaps I would have made it to town on my own. Perhaps I would have found work and built a life anyway, but it would not have been this life. It would not have had your grandfather in it or any of you." "So you are glad the wagon wheel broke?" the child asked, with the straightforward logic of youth. "I am glad for everything that brought me to the moment I met your grandfather," Olivia said, looking across the room to where Levi sat surrounded by their sons, still handsome even with white hair and weathered skin. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up and smiled, that same warm smile that had captured her heart so many years ago. "Even the sad parts," the child persisted. "Especially the sad parts," Olivia said gently, "because they taught me that I was stronger than I knew. They taught me that life goes on, even when you think it cannot. And they prepared me to recognize true love when it appeared, even when I was not looking for it." Levi made his way across the room to her, settling into the chair beside hers with a small grunt of old joints complaining. "What are you filling this child's head with?" he asked, his eyes twinkling. "The truth," Olivia said simply. "That sometimes the worst moments lead to the best things, that love is worth fighting for, that family is everything." Levi took her hand, the gesture as natural as breathing after 43 years of marriage. "Cannot argue with any of that," he said. As the family celebration continued around them, Olivia felt a deep contentment settle over her. She had lived a long life, full of both sorrow and joy, and she had no regrets. She had loved deeply twice in different ways that were both precious. She had built a business, raised children, created a home that was a center of love and warmth. She had survived loss and hardship and had come out stronger on the other side. Most importantly, she had learned that hope was not something you could sell or lose. It was something that lived inside you, resilient and enduring, waiting to bloom again even after the harshest winter. Her last hope had not been sold with her ring and her quilt. It had been there all along, waiting for the right moment, the right person, the right chance to flourish. That chance had come in the form of a cowboy on a buckskin horse, offering help without judgment, seeing not a desperate widow but a strong woman who just needed a hand up. Levi had given her that hand, and she had taken it, and together they had built something beautiful. In 1925, Levi Tanner passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 77. Olivia, now 82, grieved deeply but without the crushing despair that had accompanied Thomas's death. This grief was different, softened by gratitude for the 50 years they had shared, the family they had built, the legacy they had created. She lived another 3 years, surrounded by the love of her large family, still taking joy in her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. She spent her final years in the big house on Triple Creek, the home she and Levi had built together, sharing stories and wisdom with anyone who would listen. When Olivia Tanner died in the spring of 1928, the entire town of Shoshone mourned. She was buried next to Levi in the town cemetery, their headstones side by side just as they had lived their lives. The inscription on her stone read, "Beloved wife, mother, grandmother, she built beauty from ashes and taught us all the meaning of resilience and love." But the true monument to Olivia and Levi was not made of stone. It was the thriving family they had created, the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who carried their values forward into the world. It was the dress shop that still bore Olivia's name, passed down through generations of daughters and granddaughters who learned the art of fine sewing. It was the ranch that still operated under the Tanner name, a testament to Levi's skill and dedication. And it was the story, told and retold through the years, of the widow who sold everything and the cowboy who helped her start over. A story of loss and hope, of courage and love, of two people who found each other at exactly the right moment and built a life that mattered. On the road to Shoshone, Idaho, in September of 1876, a desperate woman had felt like she was selling her last hope along with her worldly possessions. But hope, as it turned out, could not be sold or lost. It could only be transformed, reshaped, given new life in unexpected ways. When a cowboy met her wagon and through his actions and his heart said, "Start over here," Olivia Thorne had taken that chance. She had started over, not by forgetting the past, but by honoring it while building something new. She had loved again, lived again, thrived again. And in doing so, she had created a legacy that would endure long after she was gone, a testament to the enduring power of hope, resilience, and love. The kind of love that does not erase pain, but transforms it into strength. The kind of love that sees you at your worst and offers a hand anyway. The kind of love that builds empires from ashes and fills empty hearts with joy. That was the story of Olivia and Levi Tanner. That was the legacy they left behind. And that was the gift they gave to everyone who knew them. The knowledge that no matter how dark the night, no matter how deep the loss, there was always the possibility of a new beginning, a fresh start, a chance to build something beautiful. All you had to do was be brave enough to take it.